You're listening to the Fab Entrepreneur Show, and this is episode 37. In this episode, we're talking about why you should have your online course on their own websites with their own domains and why this is so important. Hey guys, it's Mariah.
And I'm Megan, and today we are answering Ashley McDonald's question. Is it better to create a separate website around your course rather than using your current website that you are using for your current business? I feel like we get this question a lot, and I'm excited to finally address it on the podcast.
Totally. People ask us all the time, and they're always like, right, people, especially in Launch Your Signature course, where we really want people to create separate course websites, like a separate domain and a separate website for your course. People are like, why? Like, that seems more complicated. Seems like, it does cost a little bit of money. We use Squarespace, so it's like an extra $12 a month. But there's so many reasons that in the long run, this is going to make sense for you. And that's the thing is, when I first started out, I didn't put my sales pages on their own course websites. I had them just like as a page in the navigation of my blog. And I always ended up having to migrate them over to their own websites later, which can be kind of a pain. And in my opinion, it just doesn't look as professional and as like awesome to have your course just as like a little tab on your blog.
Yeah, and I think before we dig into like the reasons why we recommend this, I want to just reemphasize what you just said, that this is coming from a place of a long-term strategy.
Exactly.
When we teach you how to do an online course, it's coming from the place of this being a long-term asset, and we completely believe that that's how you should plan. So this is definitely coming from that perspective and that intention. So
right, we don't want you to have to like redo this later, which is, again, you're learning from our mistakes of me originally creating all my sales pages on the blog itself and then having to redo it. So okay, so let's dive in. So what exactly is a course website? It basically is when you have all of the pages related to your online course, you have those on a separate website on a separate domain, okay? So this is its own www.yourawesomecourse.com. It has its own domain name that's separate from your regular blog or your regular business website.
Yeah. And some of the things that might include would be your sales page, which may be the only thing you're kind of thinking of right now if you haven't created a course yet. But there's a lot of other pages that I think it's important to think about when you're considering everything involved with your course. So it's not just your sales page, that's important, but it's going to be all those landing pages. So maybe a doors closed page if you're in between launches, or your main lead magnet or freebie that kind of tells you who your hot leads are. So all of those landing pages go on this course website as well.
Yeah, some people have like a wait list, right? Like some people, when your doors are closed to your launch, you might have a wait list, or what we call a VIP list, where people can opt in between launches. Those are all on the course domain as well, on the separate website. So there's the sales page, there's the landing pages, there's freebies. One example would be webinarrockstar.co. You can download a free checklist. So it's like a freebie that is promoting, growing our email list, but it's specifically on the Webinar Rockstar domain because it leads right into that course instead of just being a general freebie on the Femtrepreneur website.
Yeah, definitely.
We also have started to expand our course website. And again, this is something that I want you guys to think about the long term, not just thinking, well, my first launch, I'm just going to have a sales page, so I don't need to worry about it. What's happened for us long term is that our separate course websites have grown and grown into having multi-page websites, like multi-page sales pages, which include, like, we have the regular sales page, we have an expanded frequently asked questions page, and this is something that's happened over the years because we've gotten so many questions, and our FAQ section on our sales page was getting out of control.
Yeah, it was
I was
too
like,
long.
We can't have 30 FAQ questions on the actual page. It's just too many. So instead, there's like the top 5, and then you can click over and read like 30 other FAQs on a separate page. And that's something we were able to do because we had its own course website. The same thing with something we implemented this year was the idea of the program tour. So before we open the doors for a program like Launch Your Signature course, our flagship program, it's a bigger investment, and it's something that people usually want to plan months ahead of time before they join. So we actually had this sort of like miniature sales page available with all the important information, even though the doors were closed. So that was all possible because we had this course website.
Yeah, and another page that we kind of expanded, we have testimonials and case studies throughout our sales page, but we wanted to showcase more. We felt like we couldn't show them all. Our whole sales page would just be covered in them. So we created like a case studies or reviews or a testimonials page, whatever you want to call it. We called it reviews. And it has its own page now. So there is a section where people can go, when the doors are closed, they can see examples of the feedback that some of our students are giving, the sales pages they have made, the courses they have created. And so it's a great way for people who come across our sales page who are interested in the course, but the doors are closed, they can still start to get an idea of what's possible with the program. And again, if this was all under Femtrepreneur, I think it would be really convoluted. It would also be hard to carry them through that journey logistically. How would we logistically
It would be so
navigate
messy.
through this?
I don't think we could.
It would be confusing. So it's really nice to just have launchyoursignaturecourse.com/reviews, and there's all the feedback there, or FAQ or tour. So it's so nice to be able to just have simple links like that too.
And again, you guys might be like, I have 5 testimonials. It's my first launch. That's totally fine. Again, long term, we're thinking this is the most sort of the best way for it to be able to expand, right? You can't expand if it's just all on your blog domain, and you won't be able to do this. So even if you're like, I don't have all these testimonials, think about a time when you do have 100 or 200 testimonials that you need to feature. Those are going to go on their own separate page, all on this course website. We also have all of our thank you pages set up on this website. Now, this isn't something you would see publicly, right? So like Megan said, there's all these pages that are technically behind the scenes, or you wouldn't see them if you just went to launchyoursignaturecourse.com or webinarrockstar.co. You wouldn't see those. But there's tons of pages that we are using, like thank you pages, upsell pages, all of those kinds of things that are more behind the scenes, but we still want them on that domain.
Yeah, we give people a chance during the launch to opt out of launch-related emails, and they get sent to a confirmation page so that if they made a mistake, they can go back. All of those kind of one-off pages we're able to do just on the course site. And it's great because we can keep them separate between all of our courses also. So there's no confusion on the back end when you're like us and we have multiple programs and courses. They're all separate. So there's no is this the FAQ for Webinar Rockstar or Launch Your Signature Course or anything like that? So
good point.
I'm jumping ahead into why. But some other things that might be on a course website would be webinars. So when you're launching and you're doing a launch-related webinar or a course-related webinar, we do all those pages on Launch Your Signature Course or whatever the course website is. So that way it's all just right there. And then the last thing would be policies as well. So your refund policy for that program, all the legal disclaimers also. But I think the refund policy having its own page and it being on the course domain is just really easy to understand. There's no confusion for your customers. There's no confusion for you.
Yeah, definitely. There's probably, I think we just went through, 10 different types of pages. And when you're in the back end, you'll see just how many pages are being set up on, really behind the scenes. There's so many pages. One thing is we can't even imagine if on the Femtrepreneur website where there's a blog and all these other pages also having these 100 other pages for the sales pages and all that kind of stuff. So it would
just drive me mad.
Would be insane. And it's so much easier to keep them separate. It's much less messy.
Yeah. So, and while we're in between before we jump into other reasons why we separate them, we have mentioned we do all of this on Squarespace. And I just want you guys to know that we did recently release a brand new free Squarespace training. It's 24 videos, I think. They're all really short and sweet and digestible, but I walk you through the entire back end of Squarespace, show you how to set up things like cover pages, which are great in Squarespace, how to use the content blocks. So if you've been curious about Squarespace, it's completely free. I've had over 3,700 people opted into this in the older version. So this is just the brand new one. So go to websiteinabox.co/free, or you can head to the show notes for this at thefemshow.com/37 and get the link to enroll. So I just wanted to pause since we've talked about Squarespace and that's what we use to do all of this. If you're curious, you can go check that out later.
Yeah, especially if you guys are wondering, like, wait, like how does it look in the back end? Like we're saying, like for me, I'm imagining when I log into Squarespace into one of our course websites, I see the sales pages, the webinar pages, the freebie pages, the doors closed pages. One thing we didn't even mention, but when you guys do start using Facebook ads, if you start using Facebook ads, we actually have multiple different versions of different landing pages for Facebook. You can use that to A/B test different Facebook ads. And you can use that so that you're capturing like all your Facebook traffic and seeing if it has a different conversion rate than organic traffic. So those are things that, you know, behind the scenes, like I said, there's maybe 50 to 100 individual pages all happening. And this doesn't happen overnight, but over time, you're going to be using this course website. And I want you guys to understand how this looks on the back end, how easy it is to just click and add a new page. You can even replicate pages. So you can just be like, I need a new thank you page, replicate. Like I need a new, you know, whatever, just replicate it. Especially for our Facebook ads landing pages, we do that a lot. Yeah, I mean, we also do again, I'm just like kind of thinking of these things as we're talking, but we also do like our entire 3-part video series pages.
Oh yeah.
on the course website. So that's like, again, just another, 9 pages that are all on there. So I definitely want you guys to see the inside of Squarespace so you kind of understand like how this works and just how you can see all the pages like organized in these kind of like a folder system basically inside Squarespace. So definitely check out the free course.
So glad we have it separate. So we have some kind of key reasons. I know we've kind of hinted and talked about a few of them, but I just want to go through why we recommend this. So we've talked about all the different pages. And so an obvious reason why is just keeping things organized, keeping them separate so that you're not going crazy like we would have been if it was all on Femtrepreneur. But I think another reason, Mariah, that you've talked about before is the authority that it gives your course by having its own domain.
Yeah.
I feel like that's something people don't really think about.
Yeah, the authority and thinking about it having its own domain where, let's say I know that I'm interested in your course. Like we can use Website in a Box and I know that it's called Website in a Box. I've seen it on Facebook or I've seen someone tweet about it and I want to go type in Website in a Box. But the only thing I can find is like, femtrepreneur.co/courses/website in a box -- like that would be an impossible domain to be like, yeah, go check out my course. Blah, 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 blah. And it's this 10 words strung together, right? So I really want you guys to think about how easy it would be to just be like, oh, check out my course. And it's super snappy. It's memorable. It's like this very just sort of short and sweet and easy to remember domain that you can send people to. So all of our courses have their own separate domains. yourfirst1k.co, webinarrockstar.co, launchyoursignaturecourse.com. So you can actually just type those in and you'll go right there instead of it being like, oh, that's not a page. You have to go to this weird kind of // page. To me, that is not only easier to share and tell people verbally, if you're on a podcast episode and you're getting interviewed and they're like, hey, you can plug your course and you don't have a short, snappy domain, that can be a problem. And it just gives it so much more authority. It looks so much more professional to be able to go to this course website and it's all dedicated to that instead of just, if I see someone that their sales page is just like a link in their navigation and it's just on their blog and that's it, I'm like, oh, they're not really taking this very seriously. You know what I mean?
It's especially for courses that are an investment. So if your customer feels like they're spending a lot of money and it feels like a half-baked effort on your end, then it's a harder sell. Like at least subconsciously, I feel like the psychology behind it is, well, it feels like it's unvalidated or it's untested or like is not going to be there forever. Like the permanence of it having its own website gives you this instant like relief as a customer that like, oh, this is like a real deal. It has its own website.
Yeah.
They've clearly put time and money into this. So I feel like I can trust them when I buy it.
I think so. I think that's important. One of the biggest things is that when your course and your sales page and all of these course related pages are on a separate website, there's no distractions. So just like I was saying, can you imagine if Launch Your Signature course was just a navigation link at the top of the Femtrepreneur blog? Well, anyone who's looking at my website, they're also getting distracted by the things that are in the footer. They're getting distracted by the announcement bar that's on the top. They're getting distracted by all the navigation links. I've seen some people have a sales page with a sidebar. Like their blog sidebar is next to their sales page. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you're just creating this environment of distraction, right? Which is the worst thing you can do. Once you've gotten someone to your sales page, you don't want them to be distracted. You just want them to be able to find the Enroll Now button. You really don't want to be like, hey, here's this other button that's like, click me, or like, go check out my archives. Like, no. So that's a huge thing, is not giving people this environment where it's so easy to click away and read a blog post instead of focusing on the sales page.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And something else that I think we've definitely encountered, and I'm sure people who have had a website before will understand this, but the ability to do custom design, not custom, but for your course to have its own design and branding is really valuable, especially in a platform like Squarespace where it's so easy to change your style settings, which is great. But if you have this on your blog and you decide you want to change the color of a button on your blog, and you may not even think, but it's going to change the color of the button on your sales page. And if you rebrand either one, if you rebrand your website, or you want to change templates, or you want to rebrand your course, it's going to affect everything. So from a logistics perspective, having the ability to have a separate design, separate color scheme, separate fonts if you want, you can go as far with that as you want. Having it be completely separate is just so nice, because there have been times where we're ready to update the Launch Your Signature course sales page, but we're not ready for those effects to necessarily go on our main website, or definitely not on our other courses, which have different color schemes or different fonts or different
they have
logos.
like totally different branding that's like not related at all. So you wouldn't be able to control that. And that's one of the things, is like thinking about, maybe on your sales page, you need your button to be red, or you need your button to stand out and be a bright color. And on your blog, that's not your brand color or whatever. But on the sales page, you're going to make it so that it converts and everything. And it might require you to use different colors. And you wouldn't be able to do that if it was all on the same website. So just definitely think about that. Not that we want, everything to be unrecognizable or branded so different they don't know it's you, but you still want to have that flexibility. Even just changing like the sizes of the fonts to fit on different things, it's so important. This was probably one of the biggest reasons that I was like, I can't physically build a sales page on the same website, because all the settings aren't going to work for what I need them to do for specifically a sales page.
Yeah. And I do want to address for any Squarespace users out there, you can't, like, every reason logistically why we've said you should switch as far as like no distractions, so no navigation and custom or different branding, you can overcome those things with custom code, with some CSS, but I don't want to complicate your life by that. So I think that that's where also this recommendation is, if you love CSS and you really want to power through and make this happen, like, you can make these customizations, but most of us don't want to mess with CSS if we don't have to. And it's not really a good long-term strategy to like rely on everything being CSS, because things will still get affected. So I just wanted to touch on that. And then we also want to talk about organization and logistics, which I feel like we've kind of talked about throughout this conversation, as far as all the pages staying organized and separate, logistically how much easier it is to have separate. But is there anything else you kind of want to emphasize as far as organization goes?
Yeah, I think it's just like when you're in the back end and you're trying to, so one of the things, again, you'll see this in the free Squarespace course. So make sure you go to websiteinabox.co/free so that you can see what I'm talking about. And there's going to be a blog post too that goes with this episode with screenshots of everything we're talking about. So we're not just, I know it's a little hard to verbally describe something so visual, but there will be screenshots in the blog post as well. But I really, when you're looking in the back end, especially if you're using a template like Bedford or Pacific, we use what are called index pages, which is kind of like a nested page. That means that each section that you see on our sales pages is actually an individual page. It's like a really small page, and then they're all stacked on top of each other. This means that our sales pages can have up to 50 sections, which is 50 pages, right? And it's cool because you can really easily drag and drop sections around. You can move like, oh, I want this testimonial to be up at the top. Okay, just drag it there. Super easy. And we love that. But it means that there's a lot of pages because each section is a page. Even my webinar registration pages have 3 sections just in a single, what looks like a single page to you is 3 little pages in sections put together. So that means that there's a lot going on. And logistically, when you look at it, I just like I said before, I can't imagine that being all those pages also being in like our blog pages. It would be insanity. So over time, these pages will build up. Like over time, you'll have more and more thank you pages, more and more special pages on this website. And I want you to anticipate that and build for that.
Yeah, I love that. And something that you said before we hopped on, sorry, I have a slight case of laryngitis. Anyone listening, I'm overcoming it. So if my voice is getting like super raspy or weird,
you sound great.
Okay, thanks. I felt like it was dragging off. But something you said before we hopped on that I loved is how when your course is on its own website, when the sales page and all that stuff is on its own website, it gives you the potential for it to expand and evolve and take on a whole life beyond what you imagined when you created it.
Yeah, basically like your course could potentially become its own business in a way. Like this has kind of happened with Website in a Box as an example, is like what starts out as just a course to you might become this whole other thing. And it might have like a book and a live event and all these other things that go with it that you're not even planning for right now. Basically, a course at a certain point can just take on a life of its own and can evolve so far beyond what you have initially imagined. I want you guys to build in for that flexibility. I want you guys to not knowing what's going to happen, but realizing that your blog itself might change. Like your business website, your blog, it might change. The things you talk about or blog about might change. You might stop blogging and have a YouTube show. Like the things on your website might change, but you can still have your product and your course on its own thing, and it can become like, just like I said, it becomes like its own ecosystem. And honestly, it kind of becomes like its own little mini business in and of itself.
Yeah, and that's such a great tease for upcoming changes to Website in a Box that you guys will see in the next few weeks. But it is something we didn't plan on, but it was a great learning lesson that we were so glad that Website in a Box was already on its own page, on its own website, and we didn't have to like worry about moving something while also trying to create new things. Yeah. So I'm always again, that goes back to what we said at the beginning with thinking long-term, thinking of these as true assets that will be a huge part of your business.
Yeah, definitely. So worth it. Like I can't tell you guys enough just how worth it is to do this from the get-go so that you're not redoing a bunch of work later on down the line.
Yeah. Well, hopefully this answered your questions if you've been wondering about this yourself. And don't forget to go to thefemshow.com/37 for the examples Mariah talked about. We will have screenshots and we'll have links to everything we mentioned as well. And that includes the brand new free Squarespace course that you can learn all about Squarespace if you go through that. And if you want to discuss this episode with us in our amazing community of online entrepreneurs, make sure to join our free Facebook group at thefemshow.com/community.
And if you guys like this episode, subscribe to the Femtrepreneur Show on iTunes. Leave us a rating and a review. We appreciate it so much when you guys do that. But if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to leave a comment below with your thoughts. We love reading and responding to your comments. And hit the like button and subscribe. And don't forget to go to thefemshow.com if you want to submit your questions to us. Just like this was a submitted question, we will give you a little shout out on the show and answer your question for you. So definitely go to thefemshow.com and let us know what your biggest question is, and we will see you next time.